I never thought I'd be giving a speech, but since I have more debates to come, I'll try to keep it short and sweet. First, I'll just start by saying thank you to Wichita for hosting an incredible NDT. Everything ran perfectly. I honestly just can't say how incredible an experience it's been being here. The tavern for doing all the coordination and keeping the tournament running so smoothly. Honestly, just the unsung heroes of the debate community, and we all need to make sure we appreciate them a lot more. The NDT committee for hosting the tournament here. Everything put into it has been absolutely incredible. Thank you to Georgetown University, the legacy and history of our program. I've just felt so honored to be a part of this team and can't say how much it has meant to me. Georgetown's love of research and high argumentative quality and everything about it has just meant so much. And special thank you to Tom Rollins for his continued support of our program. To all of our judges that have judged us throughout the tournament and throughout this year, you work as educators, help shape us all as people and advocates. Thank you to all of our opponents throughout the tournament. Seeing these debates at the NDT and made me love this activity more than anything else. Thanks again to my former high school teammates, Emily Gordon and Caitlin Walrath, as well as their partners, Isabel Slavinsky and Jacob Bolshaw, were some of my favorite and most enjoyable debates I've ever had. A special thanks to Kansas. I cannot express the amount of respect I have for Q and Will, that as debaters and as people, they're honestly some of the most persuasive arguers I've ever seen in debate, and I've enjoyed watching them for so long, and I've enjoyed watching their debates throughout the years, seeing them in Lake Elam's all the time, being able there, trying to follow their debates. To my parents and my brothers, their unwavering support has meant the world to me. To all of my friends throughout the debate community, especially the entire Roland Hall High School debate team and everyone else. I'd like to give just a special shout out to Mike Shackelberg, who was my main high school coach, and who was just honestly one of the most amazing people I've ever met in the debate community. And for everyone that has the honor of knowing him, he just makes the world a better place and has shaped me and who I am as a person. To the Georgetown debate team, Renee, John Hawk, Rafi, and Jonathan. We may be a small team, but we've stuck together and made this something incredible. And just it's been an honor being on the team with all of you. To the Georgetown coaches, Michaela Lawson, Ezra Lubis, Marquise Allard, Brandon Kelly, Seth Gannon, Jackson Urbanbach, and Anastasia Katsaridis, who is our favorite soccer mom this weekend. And lastly, to Natalie, I just cannot say how much this season has meant to me. That when we first started debating together, I had no clue what to expect. Right? No. Okay.
Great. Sorry about that.
Okay. Everyone's ready? When the United States federal government should establish single-payer national health insurance in the United States, lack of health coverage creates a widening gap in health equality that results in disparate access to system and debt gaps between all activity and the system of the company and quality by delivering high-quality care to all things access is limited in terms of disparities in health status. Many cannot afford care for health care altogether. 19% of non-elderly adults in the USA who receive prescriptions in 2014 could not afford to fill them. Millions have been bankrupted by illnesses and medical disparities in access due to high rates of insurance. The uninsured are vulnerable to go to the medical business history and medication companies that do not have a primary care provider for poor Americans. Getting insurance lose access to care being more expensive for random screening, although Medicaid improves access, special care is often not capable of position or free internal way. Medicaid means that I care for might increase diagnostic health problems that people with inadequate insurance risk financial harm when they receive services are less likely to achieve care with qualities and temporal from through access care. Uninsured with 38% more likely to be seeking emergency care. Uninsured reason for a higher risk of receiving substandard medical care. Small hospitals and people delivering lower quality of care based on process of care metrics. Poor Americans are also far less likely to receive recommended influenza pneumonia vaccine that cancer screening test quality care is worse for racial and ethnic minorities, although racial disparities in quality of hospital care could have been narrowed between 2005 and 2010 as a result of improvements among hospitals. Certain patients who are minority backgrounds have more equitable care within all hospitals. Unequal access to care along with institutional racism are important drivers of disparities among non-elderly adults with cancer more than a third dollar. When today financial capacity appears to increase mortality for treatable cancers, medical force families make difficult choices. 34% were unable to pay for food, heat, or housing. 15% took out high interest loans. 42% took out extra jobs. The ACA facilitates the insurance industry's profit maximization and devolves financing and health management to the private sector. Rates in 16, the ACA is bringing more profit insurance by transferring public tax revenues to the private sector. I abundantly data substantiate that the ability of nearly inevitable more than one half the uninsured population will remain uninsured. At least 27 million people due to high deductibles and copays. Coverage has become unusable. Administrative expenses pay for exorbitant salaries for executive profits and dividends. For shareholders, these initiatives facilitate the efforts of for-profit insurance corporations. Corporations could collect premiums from government agencies and invest at high rates of return in insurance corporations. Property by denying or delaying necessary care. Such proposal provided multiple competing for-profit private insurance corporations. Program premiums based on the public sector or privatized insurance executives make decisions about services that authorities supersede position of Obamacare and the fortunes of the private insurance industry. The neoliberal health agenda emerges as well market agenda involved by the World Bank, IMF, and other financial institutions. Executive pro market-driven healthcare facilities that exceed access to public sector housing, social security, trust funds, managerial ideology, claims without evidence that corporate executives to achieve superior quality and efficiency by managing medical services in the market that launch in inequality, poverty, and ideologically mediated violence. In 2017, the number of people living in extreme poverty has more than halved since 2001. 71% of the world's population of below same poverty has been growing across the world. The prevalence of global poverty is largely a consequence of the inequitable distribution of resources and calling for a more critical perspective that challenges those areas. Wealthy elites have been appeasing ability. The majority of people enjoy the theoretical benefits of the expansion of democratic elections, but eventually fail. We neglect the environmental degradation, call for more recognition of climate change and ecological degradation. Global warming is an existential threat. Many of us still live beyond our fair share of the planet's capacity. Do not yet see ecological immediate structural violence. Ecological determinants of health must no longer be a minority interest. A vision of global health requires a broader knowledge of basic skills. Global governing rules have created or accelerated environmental peril needs to be assessed politically in terms of transformative leadership and empowerment of adequate systemic change in my policy. And legislation single-payer health care is the most effective method to increase health insurance coverage and reduce death. In 2017, that was the first lower cost solution. I know for Medicare, 48% of Americans had no health. I had no insurance. And only 2% are on insurance. Satisfaction with coverage is substantially higher or substantially lower. 21% reduce the death gap. 6% of Medicare would have been the most logical health care. White health care is mandated. Leave divergent solution. Health care is white universal health care, and kind of one that should be the same for all citizens. But mandated health care is a company to be bought and sold. The insurance system of insurance are markedly different. Inequity into the law, collusion between Congress, corporate health insurance, and big pharma preclude a more equitable and lower cost solution. There are three major structural flaws which can be solved by a single payer system. Insurance expansion is neither universal nor equitable. States have left millions uninsured. These states account for over half of the poor, uninsured black single mothers, and uninsured working poor. It is as if Obamacare was never enacted, accentuating the legacy of structural racism. Premiums, co-pays, and deductibles for private health insurance are prohibitively higher for the working poor. This is a choice. It was a sweet deal for the insurance companies under a single payer healthcare system. There would be no co-pays or deductibles. Embracing research methods that contextualize larger goals of healthcare policy and particular battles as key insights insistence on overarching theoretical methods stifles researchers' critical potential. The acid discussion solves and spills over. Balogan 17. Qualitative researchers evaluate methods as more progressive. They are not methods, they are tools and techniques. The practical steps necessary to accomplish research. Notice that methods are intrinsically progressive as akin to light bulbs, not the electric current, or the source of light. The critical health equity research is electricity. Any research approach can be used for progressive ends or reactionary ones. Researching can approximate reality, but not capture. Researchers who cannot qualitative health disparities research like consciousness about their own epistemological modes. HIV prevention research focused on black heterosexual men. Studies that center experiences and narratives are surprisingly rare. We examine how black heterosexual men constructed safer sex and masculinity in their discourses about relationships, as well as how broader external public dialogue shaped everyday talk. We highlight how discourses about blameworthy women align with discourses that position black heterosexual women. Their interpretation provides a key illustration of how critical health equity research approach paired with qualitative methods can advance new knowledge rather than reinforce negative stereotypes or pathologize how black men spoke about women. Black men spoke about women. Our frames highlight factors beyond the level of the individual may shape discourses. Health equity research devoid of a critical epistemological stance of practice risk examining the same proofs of social structural inequality, adherence to conventional epistemologies, including the theoretical frameworks, reflect ignorance that the ability of research to bring about genuine change, grassroots mobilization, political advocacy, engagement of community stakeholders and research participants, targeting policymakers are all critical steps to effect genuine change in health equity. Must defy root causes of health inequity, utilize critical theoretical frameworks, and commit to critical practice and political engagement. Healthier services reduce reincarceration, and ensure better quality of life after release. Recently released prisoners are uniquely vulnerable and statistically benefit greatly from health insurance. Wakeman et al. 90% of states withdraw inmates enrolled upon incarceration. This leaves a medically and psychiatrically vulnerable population uninsured during the months following a release, a time during which former inmates have an increased risk of medical problems. It is of critical importance for Americans who cycle in out of correction that Medicaid be suspended rather than terminated. The U.S. releasing more than 10 million people from correctional facilities. Re-entry is a vulnerable time marked by 12-fold increase in risk of death in the first 2 weeks for prisoners with mental illnesses are particularly vulnerable. Medicaid is a distinct advantage leading to increased access and utilization of services, as well as decreased drug use and reincarceration. Without Medicaid, recently incarcerated rely on emergency rooms, increased prevalence of disease related markedly affects racial and ethnic minorities and communities to which former inmates return. The racial divide means Medicaid termination disproportionately affects minorities. Lack of medical coverage will only worsen this problem. Termination of Medicaid benefits occurs within 1 month. This affects those waiting trial who may be found innocent. 3,150 correctional facilities signed these reporting agreements with a total of 39,137 benefits suspended. Coverage improves the quality of care. It keeps previously incarcerated people out of prison. Grapes et al. 14 increased coverage among the criminal justice involved population may lead to improved access and benefits, including reduced recidivism rates. Individuals transitioning into and out of prison have significant physical and mental health needs upon release. Individuals are often uninsured, making it difficult to access stable sources of care. Expanding health insurance will facilitate their ability to access care and manage conditions, improve connection to services and management, may contribute to reduce recidivism among individuals with mental health and substance abuse disorders, and missing rates of recidivism fell following initiatives that linked to recently newly released prisoners to a medical home. Helps them access new medication and secure people with severe mental illnesses who are enrolled in Medicaid were more likely to access community mental health and substance abuse services than those without Medicaid. And Medicaid enrollees had 16% fewer detentions and stayed out of jail longer. The act embraces a large-scale upheaval of healthcare delivery, but is entirely consistent with abolitionism. The insurance research agenda is both complementary and necessary. The impact of incarceration is cyclical and disproportionately impacts minority communities. Do want it all. And 12 incarceration and releases have enduring health effects on the community as well as the individual. Former prisoners are 12 times more likely to die in 2 weeks. 2 weeks following release means sudden halt of treatment and medication. The facilities lack the resources to work with high needs of low resource population. Only 5% of HIV positive releases. Film-free Ryan White funded prescriptions to provide interruption to treatment. Many incarcerated in the first place because in treatment was not accessible. Former prisoners are dependent remain locked low socioeconomic status and unemployment and unstable housing consistently associated with low access to healthcare as well as poor health outcomes. These are exacerbated by social and economic aftermath of entrance into the criminal justice system. Criminal justice diverse public resources, decreasing the chances of public health funding. They need to develop paradigms for addressing comorbidities. Rather than addressing mental health illnesses and HIV, researchers might reconceptualize approaches for high rates of coexisting conditions. Real public health research need lies with the structure of healthcare and prevention during and after incarceration. Public health practitioners would do best to focus on 2 fronts. They should use their way to urge funds and programs that prove to provide access to treatment, but also to reduce recidivism programs or strategies that divert people from criminal justice and to community treatment. Expanding linkage to care case management and ensuring patient protection and affordable care act is used to construct alternative venues of accessing marginalized communities to forestall reliance on correctional facilities. Public health practitioners should keep their eyes on the even longer term agenda. The greatest services advocacy for drastic reduction of unnecessary incarceration, expansion and treatment programs. Medicaid expansion is an essential step for de-incarceration. And console 15 how important is the Medicaid expansion for de-incarceration. Medicaid expansion is essential for 2 purposes. Individuals in this population need health services. There needs to be a clear way individuals can get access and qualify for others. The entire ecosystem requires proper financing. Mental health and substance abuse services have been put into silos. They are not properly financed. They have been poorly integrated with standard care. Medicaid can cover basic outpatient substance abuse treatment, MasterCard, and substance abuse treatment. The public health framework is necessary towards de-incarceration. Cloud and 16. The anti-mass incarceration is one of the major challenges for China. Advocates of public health have important distinct rules, racial inequities, and inequities operate our penal system. The result of policy system that disproportionately impacts targeted and Hispanic communities coverage. We can no longer incarcerate our way out of social problems. Vast expansion of the carceral state contribute to health inequities among socioeconomic and racial gradients. How was that? Racial gradients.
Racial what?
Gradients.
I guess this is going to sound pretty basic, but why vote affirmative?
Because we think that establishing national health insurance is a good idea. That should be affirmed.
Reasons being for this debate.
Well, in this debate, we presented, one, an argument about how increased access to care would be able to reduce mortality gaps. Two, the arguments that we've read relating to the prison industrial complex indicate that the move towards universal health insurance, especially via Medicaid expansion, is a method of challenging the prison industrial complex and reducing rates of recidivism.
Okay, yeah, I guess that's a question of recidivism. I guess I'm curious, why do people go to jail in the first place, or prison?
I think there's a lot of factors for why people go to prison. I think that's, like, there's a lot of intersecting factors, and it's hard to give one overarching theory of why it would happen.
That, like, people are often wrongfully incarcerated. It's often based on things like socioeconomics or race.
Socioeconomics or race?
Those are two reasons, yeah. I mean, some people go to prison because, like, they actually kill people, but that kind of begs the question of whether or not the prison industrial complex should exist.
In that world, is it ethical?
No, I don't think that the 1AC has said the prison industrial complex is ethical. I think it said that it's actually quite unethical.
No, I'm saying in the context of, like, if someone murders someone, would the app be like, we should not have them in prison, or yes in prison?
I don't think that the app takes a stance on, like, whether someone murdering someone should be in prison. We think that the way prisons operate now is bad.
Great, cool. I guess let's talk about the... Yeah, I guess... Okay, yeah, I guess let's talk about the way that the app interacts with the concept of we should reduce prisons. I guess we read apps and then we engage those questions. I guess the research model of the app, what would it suggest that debates about single payer this year would lead to?
I think the app would suggest that understanding the intersection between public health systems and incarceration is important. So the research model that the app has forwarded is one in which we develop an understanding of the ways in which Medicaid termination policies affects the cycle of reincarceration. We think that the reason that matters is because public health insurance policy is one way.
Absent that sort of relationship to, or I guess, why is it that certain people receive disparate impacts in health? I know it seems sort of silly, but it's like there are certain relationships to, like you said, low socioeconomic status, correct?
What do you mean?
Like in the 1AC.
Yeah, I mean, some people don't have health care because of socioeconomic status. Some people don't have health care because of their race. Some people don't have health care because of their citizenship status.
Like there's a bunch of social determinants of health.
Yeah.
And those social determinants are structural things, and then we say that the recidivism towards where we, like, I don't know. Oh, I'm really not going to get time to build that argument, so I just have to do it anyway. That got me nowhere.
I haven't always understood debate. That's mostly my fault. I've never really tried to explain debate to them because it's weird and I'm still not too sure I understand it, but they've always been supportive and I really appreciate that. The next people I have to thank are the Wichita State debaters and debate team for hosting a tremendous NDT. It's run absolutely flawlessly. This is especially important to me. The Wichita State debaters have been some of my best friends the whole time. We grew up in the D3 together. Nick, Dan, Jamie are like actually some of my best friends in the whole world. So it's kind of awesome that we get to do this here. I started my debate career in Kansas. It's awesome that I get to end my debate career in Kansas, and the Kansas debate community as a whole is just fantastic, and a lot of you showed up here today, and it's awesome. Thank you to the KU administration and the Communication Studies Department. They're incredibly supportive. The official KU account tweets basically anytime a KU team wins a debate. It's a little excessive, but I love it anyway. The comms department is super supportive. All of our fantastic alumni who are always just trying to help us out, give us a bunch of support. Thank you to all of my high school coaches. Some of you are here today too, which is awesome and a great throwback. I'd like to think I've come a long way. I think you probably think that more than I do. The KU team, all of the other people on the team, just fantastic. All of you showed up to this tournament, helped cut a bunch of cards, just kind of, helped me relax between debates, which is no easy task. The graduate assistants for KU, I could give a whole speech for all of you. For the sake of brevity, I'll lump you in together. You all are fantastic. You are way overworked and underpaid, and I appreciate you very, very much. Dr. Bricker is fantastic, cuts a bunch of cards, always willing to kind of lighten the mood, and is super helpful. Genius. Speaking of genius, Dr. Harris, thank you so much. I still, to this day, do not understand you, even a little bit. But, there's something about that is just absolutely endearing that I love very much. Thank you to all of my opponents at this tournament, throughout the season, throughout my 4 years of college debate. You all have been incredible, especially Georgetown. I mean, it's fantastic seeing you all here. We haven't debated a ton this year, but you all have been tearing it up all season. You all are obviously incredible opponents. Our debate round 8 was fantastic, and I very much look forward to this debate. A few final shout-outs. Shout-out to D-Rob. I miss you, bud. You taught me kind of how to love debate and how to enjoy everything. Fry taught me that we don't lose every debate on small defensive arguments that I may or may not have mishandled, and how to kind of relax. Finally, thank you to Q. You're absolutely incredible. 4 ELM appearances at the NDT with 4 different partners, 3 first rounds, but 2 finals appearances now. Thank you for taking me along for the ride. It's been incredible, and I have struggled to keep up, but hopefully we do all right. Oh, and thank you to all the judges who judged me at this tournament. Didn't forget you. Wanted to put you last because you're all so important to me. Each and every one of you.
And last, but the other last.
Yeah. All right. It's been sent. It'll be one off and then the case. I didn't have that on the sheet. I just can't read. Word for word. Okay. Everyone good? Framing lack of access to health through the lens of inequality is anti-black whitewashing and gratuitous violence that makes black flesh fungible, bro at 16 human disinterest. Black love keeps striking spectacularization of black suffering and death, the considered pattern of black absence, black hypervisibility is a factor of anti-blackness, the theoretical assertion of black suffering into analysis with other disadvantaged constituencies is completely disregarded the large body of epistemic work pointing towards the impossibility of that analogy of violence against blackness cannot be considered as a transgression, but as the premise of human functioning, including the struggle around rights and basic material guarantees of access to public health. The active indifference is being mobilized confirmed over and again by the leftist framework of inequality and insistence on differentiation, human skill, creating signification, which keep analysis head to question human society's contingencies of class reproduction and obscuring the structural non-existence of black life. They reject their conflation of people of color and blackness. They erase the specificity of black positionality and ensure coalitions reproduce anti-blackness, not for 13 calling for non-blacks to resist the whiteness and realize the mythical shared moment after pessimistic to demonstrate the singularity of the racial slavery as the basis for globalized racial antagonism between blacks and non-blacks who demand for interracial coalitions as a disciplinary gesture against black radicalism. The U.S. racial hierarchy is structured by black non-black divided subsuming under general satisfy obscures black suffering engages in people of color blindness demonstrate how domestic racism, imperialism, murder, and ultimately misses what is essential about the situation. Black existence does not represent the total reality of racial formation, but it does relate to that totality. Blackness is structural dissociation and non-being. It's not an identity or category that can still singular relationship to slavery. Douglas 16 contrary to man, blackness is unable to articulate itself in the genre of this exclusion since in the nexus of violence that engenders the black human body as a dissociation. Blackness must be theorized as class gender sexuality. It's supposed to think of blackness for class gender sexuality, tell us violence over determines differences, sameness through slavery, singularity is inscribed onto blackness, minimize the violence, slavery, genre, discourse, only manifests itself through the violent relation that produces blackness, destruction, silence, and response to every mode of being. The affluent plays off the dialectic between phobia and fury of blacks can only make material gains if they are respectable and whites can identify with them. McVeigh, 17, the diet of phobia and fury, and 9 describes it, and people have a relationship with blackness, blackness is real, feared and excluded, but also desire, considered and included, attachment to racialized by police violence system, and then police violence is contended by a liberal economy, many black races, liberal uses, liberal economy to describe the whole structure of psychic and emotional life, and the distribution or arrangement of desire of identification, and racial neoliberalism, discursive field, does not merely move between white supremacists, hatred of black. Scratch this card, actually. The absence of the relies on quotidian violence and racial structural difference and creates commonality, harmony, 97, Reagan, sharp to render the horrors of slavery to conflict, spectacle, and scene empathy is a protection of oneself and another in order to better understand the other by exploiting vulnerability of the captive body, especially that uses thoughts and feelings of the other humanity extended to the slave and inadvertently confirm the expectations, desires, defended of the relation of shadow slavery. If the scene of beating readily lends itself to an identification with the enslaved, does so with the risk of inflicting a naturalizing condition of pain embodiment increases the difficulty of beholding black suffering, since the endeavor to bring pain to us twist the spectacle of the body and pain suffering escapes because we can only brighten nearby way. A proxy their infatuation with materialism and radical leftism prioritizes becoming ever blackness, which is the plus corner trope in Leon 16 new materialism is the response of post-humanist matter, always in the process of becoming the very substance aspect that would make better, more real than language or culture, restrict itself to patriarchal facilitate against actual rejection of the tension between universalist theory and specific inquiry, chance, creativity, and contingency are prioritized over simple to conceal the global experience of living under the condition of crisis and fetish at the expense of the addressing them because of these conditions, the imperative to live with the web through a sort of depersonalization of the event only people discuss the historical oppressed communities, but also once the distinction between trauma inflicted neither happens and persistent intergenerational harm becomes difficult to reconcile and determine with the endurance and repetition of anti-black violence structures of global anti-blackness continue to function. Our alternative is to reject the have in order to focus on an unflinching paradigmatic analysis of the cost of the end of America will lesson. Can I see how essential it is for an unflinching paradigmatic analysis is the complete overthrow of the existing order of neoliberal compromises, the radical elements of the charges movement made were due to our inability or unwillingness to hold moderate speed to the fire of the political agenda predicated on unflinching paradigmatic analysis. We allowed our energy to be displaced on pragmatic considerations. This is a question of sequencing prison abolition movement, which is not account for the absolute dereliction of blackness, recuperates and redeems those institutions, will listen through any musing of the antagonistic and identity formation was committed of the precipitated crisis of the institutions and of the logic that undergird the U.S. must come to grips with contradictions between the political demands of social movements such as the prison abolition movement, the ideological structure that underwrites this political desire, the positionality of black subjectivities at the heart of those contradictions and unspoken desires is back up with the political limitations of civil society, radical social movements is the reproduction of anti-black politics that nonetheless represents itself as being in service of the emancipation of the black person's life. The value of reintroducing the black category this way lies in the black subject's potential for extending the demand man placed on state capital formation because they reintroduce them into the discourse expands the intensity of the techniques and positionality so it makes a demand that is in excess of the demand made by the positionality of the worker. There's not a grammar that explains black suffering only, but black focuses smoke screen on that distracts from violence in the quotidian section 10 free. Humans proceed ontologically by more dramatic question what does it mean to suffer black? And also there's too much posturing about points of anything we observe what's the way we don't have a language that adequately articulates parents and commonality of our positions with suffering is being black smoke very singularly proper illumination to be not speak of a discharge and harmons response to look all internally in the scenes of mundane and quotidian diffusion occur the point being not the black side pursue the wrong argument that they're disavowed from building argument the first was far from living close agreements what does it mean to suffer the challenge of human expression of the and express will refuse to circulate discourse in the affirmative discourse the section number 17 the position of the unthought or the black position of the recurrent attempt at tracing how to think about and within the wounded disseminated vertigo that is blackness protagonism is already there precisely because of antagonism there's a refusal of any affirmative imperative to move beyond leave behind or scale on the antagonism then this simultaneousness with a refusal to accept the subject is on antagonism and anything less than protagonism we're talking about something involving at the level of desire led can relate to from practical theoretical activity of whole academic fields of political formation without critical interpretations of these figures of negativity in my writing brush from an effort to punctuate things in a different way the very procedure that complicates things that makes them that makes things simple that uncomfortable that ruins the initial plan that throws things up balance that which blackens things is also that which enables the potential for genuine care possessive because it requires the risk of genuine questioning this offering the question posed by and as anti-blackness is dangerous and disorienting offering because it opens the space for articulating what is unthought and encountering the what is unthinkable and the material discursive activity involving making it all available for judgment at a fundamental level. Can I get a case to should I read this one? Surrender to blackness, reading Real 14, surrender to blackness is commanded to the level of foundation thought being if there is any hope for revolutionary practice of search for blackness, anti-blackness is singularity with no equivalent force we can understand. Anti-blackness in general concept of life, unspeakable force, blackness, coalition, will destroy, fetishize the necessary recognition of the anti-blackness coalition, or building form
the distinction between fetish and the absolute pertinence and the imperative when said a fetish is an object you must render to whiteness, identifying social life doesn't disprove social sex and love Gordon. It is moved when I find them, if I find some situated and ethical affirmation with them. What Gordon argues is the value of so now he fully accepts the definition of self as pathological affirmation or refusal. To this is what self and brightness and valorization of health, life versus the outer grim, a transformation that turns towards whiteness and embrace of him, but also without pain as black. Social life is not negative because black social life vitalizing black life is not social life in the universe form by because the same civil society case the all right co-ops the Matthew 17 all right plus single pair son rich players believing single pair home care troubles and cares more about white working class identity politics and traditional conservatism Trump supporting right case for single pair supported vision of where ideological purity on economic issues much more important and where welfare state is Michigan both political base among working class white single pair which are white people to the right initiative people social democrats and occurs up currently all right women some in our section away from becoming more about the fear of by being fired and losing their health insurance single pair universality because of health white working class without making them enroll in tested programs there research method argument with few criticisms first Shelton evidence recommends research tailored against particularities of identity group Shelton 17 the volume of literature describing health disparities has not made strong distinction between minority health promotion needs, has different terms and intervention strategies that matter. Most we recommend that researchers be thoughtful and social metric group with their grouping disparity population as their instrumental diversity within groups work hard. That group that their universalism fails lies and can according to one hand persistent inequities in white and black can be best addressed by erasing the universal program to help all need universal programs to reduce racial disparities and how they're wrong about the political value rations or policies cannot possibly solve persistent racial inequities and how they're unrelated to coverage affordability here, how healthcare access, welcome culture, rates have higher rate of infant mortality than the white women who drop out after 8th grade work card. At 8th grade, the second, their primary care, their primary harm is health disparities. That's limiting their evidence. Bullying 17, health equity research, whatever critical epistemological stance and practice first, examining the same for social structural inequality, conscious or unconscious adherence, conventional epistemologies, the reiteration of semantic euphemisms such as health disparities, reflect the epistemology, ignorance of the ability of research to bring about genuine change. The abolition doesn't solve. They don't have a reverse causal piece of evidence. They have sufficient to end prisons or the prison industrial complex. It just leads to private justice bill, and if they don't solve the broader structures under Trump, their plan would look more like UCC than Bernie Care, which turns the whole Afghan 17 term Trump genuinely conservative version of single payer could permanently reshape the political landscape. Does this mean a standard like single payer? Absolutely not. Trump conservative version offers a protection only for catastrophic illnesses, have a large deductible pay only for essential care, which will exclude abortion, contraception, and gender reassignment surgery would attract from an enthusiastic support for American religious groups, special Catholics, and evangelicals.
Okay. My first question is, what does healthcare look like in the world of the alternative?
Well, we've kind of problematized the notion of questioning that general kind of sense of futurity. The Leung evidence says that, or the second evidence says that a focus on what we do now trades off with a focus on what is, because blackness is always circulated across something else.
But just like in the world of the alternative, do people have access to health insurance? Do they have access to healthcare? If someone wants to go to a hospital,
I mean, I don't think it's possible to say what freedom will look like when we don't know what it is, but what it's not. But I will say that in terms of health and care and the way that they're constitutively fine in our existing amendment, for example, the fact that, like, I don't know, single-payer debates are animated upon black flesh, while simultaneously those people get the brunt of the law and are also open to the pathologization of doctors, care, etc. is bad. Is more about sort of like the way that, yeah, I think the Sexton Barber evidence also says, you know, like the way that genuine care would work is one through a politics of disavowal and one in which we disorient the structure in its existing manifestation, because the evidence is pretty clear that when you blacken things and when things are unable to sort of stay on the hinge in which we currently comprehend them, the possibility to understand what was missing the entire time becomes more.
Okay. The Matthews evidence, I'm going to read the last paragraph. So even if Trump were to be persuaded by his followers and embrace single payer, he'd face a tough task. He can't form a new right-wing party and sweep the legislative elections. He has to change the policies of the existing Republican Party, which has spent decades fighting proposals for universal health care. That's much harder and suggests that the Spencers, Buckleys, and Debershires of the world
the plan
won't get
fiats
their wish.
universal health care through the current government, which is Republican, so he wouldn't have to fight the Republican government.
So that's
if you want to concede your draft doesn't pass, we can go home now.
Wait. No, but I want to clarify though. This evidence says that he would have to change the entirety of how the Republican Party operates because they have currently rejected these proposals. Why would they suddenly embrace it?
Well, we have read evidence that says that the kind of far-right version of the Republican Party is one that really wants single-payer. We don't have to win that it spills over to other issues. There's a portion of this Matthews evidence that says that people on the far right are afraid of kind of lashing out and doing more
Wait,
heinous
so
shit than they
just to
already do
clarify?
because they
Just to clarify,
don't want to
does
lose their health
the negative
insurance.
theory think that the alt-right version of single payer would be worse than Bernie care?
We think that it would less effectively solve the things that you have claimed to solve. That doesn't presuppose a political
very
judgment of better
simple
or worse.
answer is that anti-blackness ontologically doesn't mean you can't analyze the sociological structure. It just means that you get trapped in the sociological structure when it's a telos of the politics. So even if you were to win, like, AKA, you read a card that says, like, I don't know, the defense we read against the AF wasn't great, we're like, yeah, that's why your world sucks.
Okay.
I'm gonna take a sec. Like everyone has already said, and everyone still ends up being long. Thanks to Wichita, this tournament's been great. Tab Room, the NDT committee, everyone for hosting. We're really lucky that we get to come to awesome NDTs every year, and I'm really thankful for the schools that decided to host. Thanks to Georgetown for support for the last 4 years. It's been an incredible ride. Thank you so much to everyone who's judged us throughout this tournament, all of our opponents. Thank you in particular to Kansas. It's always been awesome to debate you all, and Q and I especially have been debating for pretty much our entire time debating, and it's really awesome that we get to finish it out tonight. Thank you to everyone else that I've debated over the years. You've made me smarter, and you made me want to come back to debate after my brief sabbatical. Thanks to everyone who's judged and given awesome feedback, also made me smarter. Thanks to everyone who's here with us from Georgetown. We have some awesome younger students that are the future of the program, and I'm really excited for you all and really thankful for all of your support and help this weekend. Thank you to our coaching staff that came along to support us. In particular, thank you to Jackson and Anastasia, who came unpaid just to hang out, which is pretty nice. Thanks to Michaela, who has done an awesome job. I don't see her anywhere, but she took over the program, and here we are, and that's pretty great, so I hope she's enjoying that. Yeah. Go Michaela. Yeah. I guess the other two people I have to thank is definitely Ezra. Ezra convinced me to come back to debate. He's the one person who's always told me that I was smart enough to be here, even when I thought I wasn't, and I'm really thankful that I made it back. And lastly, thanks to Bernstein. This kid is 18 and he's in the finals of the NDT. You heard it here first. He's the GOAT. Big things coming. And also, he's had to deal with me for 4 months, so round of applause for that. again. We're giving the 2AC. Let's do it. Case K.
Vote out to embrace single-payer health insurance. National health insurance reduces death. Disparate healthcare provision and drug companies' profit manipulation and Medicaid gaps. It's not reform. It's the biggest offense of corporate profit insurance and hegemonic neoliberalism in decades that saps corporate profits and gives the middle finger to neoliberalism. When people are released from prison, it's the high watermark of death, policing, and violence. We have a rigorous defense of why intervening at that point in time is critical and effective. Winning the efficacy of our mechanism disproves the thesis of their critique because we've proven it's possible to confront the worst instances of anti-black violence. Healthcare disparities cannot be explained by a single factor, but reigning in the system's commercial power is a complementary strategy for equitable resource distribution, protesting racialized policy, and so on. You should prioritize mass biological death. It's intrinsically bad because it causes physical pain, suffering, and forecloses future value. If we win that there are groups of people who do want healthcare, it demonstrates the value inherent in the act providing choice. Second is it turns the alt insofar as they expect to create some value. There's inherent optimism in voting neg. That approach to the world is impossible without any basic care or services. The lack of discussion about this form of reform leaves unasked questions and unexamined consequences that leave officials to default on criminalization. Only through a discussion on prison health can we shift it from the status quo. Mercurian 13, prisons have become hospitals, asylums, and retirement home. The greatest problem in the IWC that system was created and still defined by unexpected, unintended consequences when officials mandated harsher sentences or shorter health programs. There tend to be a tougher requirements and taxpayer money as a result. The IWC's healthcare system needs to take into account when they adopt officials for the laws, policies, and funding throughout the decades of passing laws. And I feel like systems with an unprecedented number of advancements in the healthcare system without asking difficult and fundamental questions about what we have created. Failing to ask these questions is a way of answering them. We just keep our current system, which will also resource strain our prison system and result in diminished levels of care. We get durable fiat. Obviously, single payer wouldn't happen in the status quo. That's why it's inherent. No healthcare would happen in the status quo. Our research method can still matter for reaching productive conclusions, even if this version of the app isn't exactly feasible. Some think single payer is still better than no single payer, and Matthews goes app because he says he can't switch the way that the GOP operates. The alternative empowers Trump. Leopold and 17, many progressives are still only true defense of resisting everything Trump does, no matter what. While resistance is critically important, we will all fail unless we're combined with a strategy to reverse rural inequality, defensive struggles to enhance popularity rather than diminishing resistance only. These make our politics Trump-centric. Trump's thrives on being the center of attention and taxpayers' ego, propel him in action and show his energy base and show less Trump to get to accept the terms of resistance must be part of at least the president's promotion and proactivist positive agenda. The key terms include single payer healthcare. That's our agenda, not Trump's. Marked it, not Trump's. The alternative just means that we don't do anything productive until Trump gets out of office, which unfortunately might take a sec. Resistance has to be combined with pragmatic consequences. Turnus and 17's critics of Trump are corporations and resistance who have effectively opposed authoritarian regime to show how moral incisions and pragmatic compromise need to come out into a single ethos of opposition. Those who oppose should be aware of the dangers of self-righteousness and fury. Resistance shows that compromise will be necessary when participation, politics, and ability to tolerate these appointments as a political sense of opposition. Opponents to the claims of opponents have the same as trust in them or willingness to operate them in all circumstances. Those who adopt one strategy fighting Trump's policy should respect those who adopt different strategies. The effective opposition must be active. Creative initiatives can take many forms, including conventional political channels, meaning defeats with zillions and finding ways to win small cumulative victories will require clarity. We didn't read the Shelton card. Their universal bad argument isn't how the app was justified. We didn't say that healthcare affects everyone in the same way, rather that it's very different. But their boldly re-highlighting is also wrong because it's not only about health disparities, it's about multifaceted consequences of the health system, especially in relationship to mass incarceration. Yes, we saw that. We're the only ones with a card. It says that it's an integral part of why mass incarceration happens. Their Coons evidence says Trump should propose a conservative vision, but doesn't speak to how the plan would actually be implemented. K, the role of the judge is to decide whether the app is a good or a bad idea. 1 is clash, showing the 1AC guarantees our research is relevant. Net contradiction. Their arbitrary framework skirts engagement with the 1AC, which hurts arguments to refinement, which is important because it's the only way that we lead debate with the ability to contradict. Second is fairness. Obviating evidence of 1AC for the sake of the next theory of the weak is bad because it makes it impossible to healthcare. Good bad debates happen best when we research concrete policies because it allows us to jump into specific details of each proposal and have the deepest conversations about each mechanism. The impact is topic education. It's the only thing unique topic by topic, but only contextualizes its argument to the app of the quantitative and qualitative research conjunction. Merging public health to our discourse is particularly good with mass incarceration to understand the legislative connections between de-incarceration and public health services. Public health education targets intervention towards practices like community care after prisoners are released. If we win this offense, it's intrinsic to bringing these arguments to academic spaces. I'll finish the card. Clause 16. The investments in community mental health care, social services, resulting in warehousing people in correctional facilities, the vast majority of correctional systems for non-violent activities, symptomatic of a failed community mental health system, and overlines of police, courts, and correctional agencies, and incarceration can be detrimental to health because it's poor quality health care, balance, trauma, and mental health confinements are extremely helpful. I've all just started to see that languages between incarceration, hypertension, asthma, and diseases, and general health functioning. Disparities in incarceration can be racial disparities in health and funding, such as arrest, incarceration, criminal record, had long-lasting detrimental effects on health of entire communities. Total health fundamentals can't use public health funds to address the police and conditions of confinement, drug policies, health priorities. They can be interventions that incorporate health and functional harm reduction, and creation of public health safety agencies, make sure the criminal justice system a goal of health reform. Failures can advocate for increased resources informed by the science of harm reduction. De-incarceration will require legislative change that expands the capacity of public health and social service infrastructure to public health leaders and pursue interventions that enroll eligible individuals into Medicaid, officials of all kinds of provide reimbursements designed to divert people from arrest and engaging academics, tuition institutions, and the pursuit of lessons fundamental in the public health practice. I guess I'm going to mark that card again in public health practices. It's really long. Their broke card, their argument is tautological, and the worst form of gridlock and identity formation that aids carceral logic. Conversation around prisons are sanctioned to the backdrop of conversation, not just in the context of healthcare, but in politics in general. It's also asked, Rock and 16, destroys governing cities, creating killing zone, and natural demands that the government would be held responsible. I know this would be widely utopia, but I'm struck by the absence of a demand in commentaries. The AF isn't white, black, divide. It's very much about the different circumstances that relate to access to healthcare, like citizenship, socioeconomic status, and race. Our argument will be that it's impossible to relegate insurance to only white, black, or a single cause. Scripts of anti-blackness are not predetermined. Gordon 17 should announce to me the white and black, the world's going to be more clothes. Black is the absence of social ethics, communities that no human beings really. Any of these things are making people, and one such thing, people becoming such is another. And seeing that his position is false, moves forward, he's asking by the citizen that attempts to force such identities, relational matter of fact, looking beyond black, which seems to be the exception of meaning is singular and semantical to the grammar of meaning, the grammar of how meaning is produced emerges with the pessimist model one. Thanks to pessimism, the guiding attitude, the critique would be that optimism and pessimism are systematic for a priori restrictions, existence, continue, not accidental, and social world ahead is a manifestation of choices because human beings only the future instead of determining us. The task at hand is span, and this author could have already depends on the commitment. One could be pessimistic in the act of forecasting, one could be optimistic about the same. What if there was no way to know the point of some actions, success or failure, but whether we deem them worth taking? Their next argument is about empathy and pornotroping. Here's a defensive discussion how healthcare affects individuals. Contingent empathy is good. Gurren and 17, trying to fully understand how the same is achieving full understanding. And to understand these things on the margins happens all the time. Following the insights of black feminists on these margins, understand more than at the center. We are engaged in integral empathetic moral attentions, working towards complicated processes of understanding. Usually what we get is just a glimpse. We never really know people. We can't really know his views. So often of working at it, and I take this to be a failure of both imagination and moral agency, since we are constituted by these relations. But some relations make it hard to see. With entangled empathy will seem impossible. That relationships are a part of us means that we can and must work within them and try to change them. The alt does nothing towards affective economies that function in private-public divided that supercharges capital modes of production. Berlin 4. The science is the Burgess project with aesthetic is a marker for the pleasure of capitalist modes of distinction. The aesthetic of modernity always involves a market, even the nature of the value against the objects of exchange merit. Aesthetic experience gives to the good life with a different pacing in the working life. You don't need to work for the privilege of slowness of time to have a thought experience whose productivity is subjective, connecting to sense origin, something that feels non-instrumental, absorbing and self-affirming. Even the habit of the aesthetic experience is disturbing and utopian, avant-garde, or just difficult, a counter-motive way. One cannot say about it that its critical distance interferes with the reproduction of violence in whatever form. Permutation do both. It solves the majority of their offense insofar as that it's about introducing some sort of valuable academic scholarship, but individual reasons or ethical orientations are not incompatible with the one he sees. Wilderson's wrong. Thinking through racial metaphysics as the sole determinant of political possibilities, reductionism of black life. With their strategy implies you can perfectly control your affect, which is not only impossible, but turns pessimism. It implies black people don't have control over how they operate. Mary Ann 12. Wilderson is prepared to say black suffering reconfigures being. It is not hard to suspect the type of absolutions that work here. The emerges to be pivotal, disparately dogmatic. There's always a desire to have black experience and the worst of public such desire and public constants into a sentimental moralism. Black as everybody does without reverse this logic. It does not seem to reduce ontology, non-groupability, non-human, being non-capable, symbolic resistance fall outside of any language of authenticity in your operation. Such a subject symbolic remains foreclosed as such blackness is inevitable conclusion, which remains ever-present. White human capacity is parasitic on black incapacity. His insistence on the black is absolute. Wilderson could only reify the void at the heart of universality. Black is beyond the limit of contingency that is beyond a foreclosure that defines a violence whose traces can only be thought of as violently. I'm marking that as violently. There's an affective pessimism. Their framework produces ontological inquiries into how the world and systems operate. So only performance. Reggie 13. Performance is essential to say definition of such that performance and like nature violence lines is the performance of the ways excessive fully demonstrative about spendings, race and affect produced by violence. Aesthetics of violence exists as forms of cultural or for expression, wherein the question of blackness is the auction block of the world. Affective charge mobilizes that which is not fully redeemable, understandable, legible, or visible. Affective change mobilizes that which is not fully redeemable, understandable, legible, visible. Black bodies are not marked, they are socially positioned in ways that were already saturated with violent meaning. Affect takes a turn away from the potential for rupture, moving towards a more striking accusation that affect is structured by the very anti-life violence that forecloses recuperative possibility of performing identities. The alternative has to encompass the F, or it actively refuses improved position conditions and abolitionists. And Davis and Duquesne, the most difficult question is how to abolish the balance between reforms that safeguard laws of prisoners and strategies not to promote the abolitionism. I don't think a restrictive body line would be structurally, it would be otherwise absurd for radical prison activists to refuse to support demand for better health care inside the state under the pretext that such reforms would make the prison a more viable institution. Permutation, the AF embodies the alt embodies the AF. Berger and 17, central to abolitionists versus the fight for non-reformist reforms. Measures that reduce the power of an oppressive system, illuminating the system's inability to solve the crisis it creates. The starting point of abolition, connecting the radical regime with a broader transformative vision rather than juxtapose the fight for better conditions against demands for eradicating the institutions of state violence. Abolitionists navigate this divide. Abolitionists are less than participating in campaigns that to reduce state violence and maximize people's collective well-being, to end solitary confinement, to stop destruction of new prisons, push for universal health care. Abolitionists refuse to divide the paradigm of prisons are catch-all solutions.
Cool. Are you good?
Yeah.
So this kind of alt-right stuff, the durable fiat question aside, the plan would require Trump and the GOP to pass single payer, yeah? Okay. If that's the case, why would Trump have to fight in order to get sort of vision of the party.
What do you mean his vision of the party?
Well, that's what your recutting of the Matthews card says.
What the Matthews evidence says is that Trump would have to fight for there to be some sort of alt-right movement that seeks to implement healthcare in a way that the alt-right wants, because the alt-right doesn't really care about healthcare to begin with.
Okay. If it's true that like the Ryan-style GOP, like traditional GOP, doesn't really like universal programs, what piece of evidence do you think you have that says that they would implement the app in the kind of detailed, robust way that the 1AC is presented?
We think the 1AC fiats single-payer healthcare.
Sure. Single-payer means quite a few things.
Okay, well, we'll answer any clarification questions on what that means. We think that in the context of the app, it means that the government fully funds healthcare for everyone who wants it in the United States.
What part of the plan do you think says that?
I think that I'm clarifying the plan text. I think it's
2AC,
impossible.
That's nice.
Well, I mean, I think that the plan says that we fiat a single-payer health insurance. I'm explaining what single-payer health insurance is. That seems pretty reasonable.
Okay. The permutation. So the alt embodies the F card. Is just like abolition is pretty radical. I guess where do you think?
That's not really actually what it says.
Okay.
But you can ask your question.
Would you like to recharacterize that card for me, though?
Yeah, I would like to recharacterize that card for you, because what the Berger card says is that one thing that is central to abolitionist work, i.e. attempting to get rid of the carceral state as it exists, is what they call non-reformist reforms. That is, willingness to engage with the system as it exists for the purpose of things that are so radical that they can't be considered reform as we traditionally think of it, right? So it's not just working within the state to make the state more powerful, it's working within the state to, get rid of the state.
What part of that do you think is a kind of refusal of recuperative logics of this world?
We think that it's a refusal of the way that prisons operate now.
Okay.
That's good.
Is this just an extension of perm do both, or is there like a separate part? Okay,
we don't think that the part of the app, the part of the alts that will say abolition is good is incompatible with
the app has forwarded a pretty robust standard of research method being good. If we win your research method is bad, but you win that there's a potential positive consequence of the plan, who should win?
I think that if we win, there's a potential positive consequence of the plan. That is a reason why our research method is good.
Okay.
Because it means we produce good research.
Oh yeah, my goodness. Okay, everyone, I think I'm gonna start. Okay, so I won't promise to be prompt, but I will try not to waste your time because I know we're all tired. I'll thank my family. I know that there's a huge chance my dad is watching this right now. If you ever seen Godbody19 on Twitter, that's absolutely my dad, and he tweets about Farrakhan Louis Farrakhan way too much, but so don't click because you'll just be like, what the fuck, her dad's a black nationalist. But anyways, I love you and thank you for sending me random articles about racism in the university. Though it doesn't apply to debate, I know that you care, you're trying, and I still find it pretty cute. My mom in particular, you're always sending messages that are just affirming. Of course, you're my mom, and my siblings too. But yo, to the KU coaches, major key. Obviously, this has been like a 9-year project. Of me debating, and each year it gets more and more difficult to explain to myself why I allow myself to do this, but I'm always amazed that we have the opportunity to teach with some of the best intellectuals in the nation, and some of my best friends in particular. I would like to thank Banky. You annoy the living shit out of me, but that's because you love me, and you're loyal, and you're focused, and you will show up in that debate. You don't give a fuck. You will just sit there until the decision comes out. And talk to me about the next debate because that's who you are, you're a friend, you're true, and you've supported me without end. Allie Ray Chase, you know it, girl. You've had my back when Sean is yelling obscenities that nobody can understand. You have the courage to please say, can she step away for a second? Can we re-clarify what this debate is going to be? And just like calm down and get her some Sour Patches. And that hints to the last KU coach that I'll thank is super a lot, and that's Sean Kennedy. I remember going to the DDI in, I think it was, 10th grade, December before my 11th grade year. I annoyed the living shit out of you. You were trying to tell us not to do library time. That was bad. And you were like, yeah, I'm supposed to be off during these hours, but I'll come help you out. And I'll just say that I went for neoliberalism way too many times my senior year. But I will never go for the zero money ontology. I'm sorry that that's not what this debate could be, but you're amazing. The other main tenet of people that I want to thank are Kendall and Jaleesa. Kendall, debating with you was the best opportunity I could have had. You taught me how to mentor, what it meant. You revitalized my really shitty attitude towards debate, and I couldn't be more grateful for you. Your energy has paid so much off, and I mean, I'm less bratty than I was back then. Jaleesa, you also changed me for the best. I want to keep this short, but I'll just say, if anyone knows Jaleesa, the best thing she's ever taught me is my name is motherfucking no, and that means that we are negative, always negative, and that's why I'm also grateful that I can do this in this debate, that there's something really powerful about that. Magical black people that I would just like to thank. Marquise, kind of odd to thank the other people from the other team coaching staff, but anyways, arch nemesis in terms of thought, and I can't explain how much I respect you. Thank you for always supporting me. King, you know you're the real one. MVP, Anthony, you're just absolutely fucking brilliant. Nick and Devon, you passed the torch. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here, and you're incredibly intelligent. All the black people who have loved me, and built me, and made me feel welcome and supported this weekend and throughout my career. My advisor, and the KU McNair staff, you fucking rock. You always tweet at me, Dr. Alexander, I'll see you tomorrow morning. I promise I'll still be at class. I know I'm leading discussion. My best friends who aren't at the tournament, Naima, Kendall, Madison, Christina, Peg, thank you for showing up. Oh, and my boyfriend, Topher, thank you. And those who's helped me this weekend, judges I've appreciated greatly, Phil Samuels, Amber, Taylor, Sarah Lundeen, thank you so much. I appreciate you. There's a billion other judges who've helped me a lot, but I really do appreciate you. Fierce competitors, Hex, really, Gabriella Knight, you're amazing. Special shout out to He-Man. You are the motherfucking MVP. And I literally can't speak enough to how much you've meant to me in my career. I know the nemesis thing gets annoying, but genuinely the most intelligent person that I've had the opportunity to interact with outside of Natalie here, and some other people who I will talk about. And judges, I'll give a quick shout out because I think some of this is pretty important. Competitors to judges, I just want to say that Krakoff and Klarman, your intellectual ability throughout these last couple years has been fundamental to me. I appreciate it. You give thoughtful decisions. You put your pride aside. You have judged me and just been amazing to me as a human being since we've debated. And I just wanted to say a special shout out to that because I appreciate it. And yeah, everyone else who judged me throughout the years, rock chalk, and I'll begin. Oh, and Will, thanks for helping me constrain all the whites this year. It's been fucking tight, and it's been a good opportunity for me. It's let me engage in debate in the way that I wanted to. So yeah, let's get back to the speech.
Ryan parasitic on the black body severely container for TV and alien criminality, continuing the fungibility of blackness is a negative standard of identity. The fundamental antagonism undergirding civil society is the slave's relationship to the world, the slave's positionality, absolute relation, problematized productivity, self-articulating, an inhuman cry that cannot be registered at the level of civil society. It recognizes subjectivity. In this conjecture, the only politics possible is unflinchingly searching for grammar to articulate the specificity of black suffering. The rubric of the affirmative operates to anti-blackness when he adopts the positionality of the worker, problematizing particular relationships of production with the goal of making accumulation capital more fair and democratic. This is key evidence. This means they maintain an attachment to grammar and humanity capacities that can only be articulated within civil society. This is specifically true for the rhetoric of economic inequality. Rhodes says that economic inequality describes violence through the grammar of exploitation rather than accumulation fungibility, which relies on the presumption of subjectivity, humanity to articulate its semantics, and the economic inequality structure parasitic on blackness because it relies. Yeah, I don't know to say that. But anyway, the political rubric for rubric forces black bodies to circulate as workers, disfiguring their demands for freedom as means for equality of production while rendering blackness fundable. The alternative involves a fundamental antagonism. The social plan itself, slavery, has reduced flesh to a signifier of pure captivity, reducing all attempts of black bodies to exercise agency and criminality within civil society. The violence in the middle passage condition and produced by white little benevolent investment in black suffering that is gratuitous, unmoored from the rational order of any economic logic, only unflinchingly refusal, search for recognition by civil society, complete withdrawal of hope in the state reform can articulate a grammar of suffering that captures the specificity of anti-black violence, which 100% evidence means that the permutation fails and the affirmative can only reproduce anti-black violence. The extend the sex and evidence plan focus traits off of the grammar of developing black suffering. Debates over single pair are inevitable. It's the only topical affirmative this means debate should be of the grammar study utilized in order to rationalize that policy is not too far away from the logic of a research paradigm. If we want to link that their affirmative circulates the terms of blackness, and it implicates the way that the law interprets blackness, and henceforth the plan would result. The plan doesn't actually happen, but their imagination did, and we've impact from that as corner stripping plan focus literally means we force blackness back into the world into material by corner tripping material fucked up violence happening to their bodies, ignoring that imagination of violence on black people's justification for playing itself as violent. In fact, and if they say it's necessary, violence improves our argument about health and linguistic violence is ignored in order to prioritize materialism justification for engagement with the world. The rule about a surrender to blackness. Our argument is about instilling that anti-blackness is an ontological category without any horizontal equivalent. Is the Wilderson and Sexton evidence are pretty good at explaining that our argument is that we need to create a condition of complete disorder. Their argument that the only standards they have on are fairness and topic education. They're affording a fairness as an intrinsic good, is an appeal to an entity that relies on the judge to fill in their own desires and uphold debate as a white fantasy space. That's Wilderson. Fair play as a white person thinks on the rules apply to everyone. A way of being in the world which legitimates institutional practices. We are fair and balanced as odious derivations of we or the police. Whites are guilty of reproducing concepts like fairness and wanting stability and reform while presenting as having the best intentions. Fair and no conflict over which institutional reform is better than the other one. Provided smoke screen because white people love their institutions. Every black brown body that doesn't want the things you love is a threat to your fantasy space. Your brain to share pleasures. White people are guilty of restriction duties which reproduce the institutions. Reproduces America so that the black body is incorporated, provided that into our code, provided their team players, we will ranker the energy and the ranker which is on our fantasy space. The very terms of the debate future white suture around white entitlement somewhere in Sanskrit is going Sanskrit for graffiti. You're trying to be fair, promoting diversity. The black matrix of black women is located in the structural position of rape. This concept is not formulated as an incident which happens born or more or less modal to, but very condition of being black women, but and by extension, the sleep in which was worlds built. Wilderson says no slave, no world, and we modified the Douglas directive of black men to say just like no and no world. That's James 13. Plus, anti-being communal conceptual wellness created the room to officers of a habitat and boundary defining democracy. Africanism recognized two determinist phenomenon. Democracy as a boundary defining freedom through captivity and marine philosophy through reimagining freedom through flight reproductivity points to the black matrix, the psychosymbolic material subjugation, true capital, over shadows, racial rape, senior racial gender difference, and masculine back suffering, female back trauma, and the black male reign, death row, imprisonment, stop in prison, centered on violence in the public, racial rape is so complicated, miracles are all blood trails are traceable back to the black nations, focus on the future subjugators, extensive reach and sharing space of colonization, sacrification, black women's matrices, cabinet, public record, the black matrix offers deniability, state, and intimate violence where the truth meets Western democracy, manufactured black matrix is also doable in the linguistic material economy, civilians of primary targets terror against black female matrices, children, the deity, the police, military, master, mistress, races, hard immigrants, black captains and maroons cannot be found on the bodies of black matrix, politicized black mothers transformed tragedies into breach of democracy. Our culture synonymous as a problem, seemingly radical movements like the prison abolition movement, they forget to center on the ideological structure of civil society, the positionality of the slave, which means that the criticism has to be a prior sequencing question before they can even attempt to evaluate the efficacy of the 1AC. The 1AC programs of political strategies, rhetorical structure, and political desire undergirded by supplemental anti-blackness, which reinforces civil society as Williamson 3. Blackness is a position of absolute legitimacy, so civil society cannot be established through hegemonic interventions, movements, foreclose the insatiable demands and endless antagonisms of the prison slave in waiting. The rhetorical structures of political desire underwritten by anti-blackness, the social stress narrative anticipates the violations again at the level of the street as well as the body. Here is the moment where she finds herself an abolitionist, yet she feels it necessary to dwell the same anticipation. The Muslim tide between Assad's police encounters her experience in civil society and nurturing both the radical coalition raising disturbing questions about political desire. But for black people, the civil society itself is a state of emergency dichotomy between white ethics and its irrelevance to violence of the police. Profiling is not dialectical when one intends to speak about the paradigm of policing force back into discussion of particular events. And, well, can you read the second card?
Yeah.
Cool. The black-white binary argument we've already impacted on this. This is the black femphobia just said. We've said that we have to understand blackness as class, gender, race, and socioeconomic citizenry. Blackness is already in contrast to citizenship, what is unfree is defined as slave, fugitive, and in contrast to civil society, which is the reason why they can articulate the sort of fugitive politics of the 1NC because they force it to reproduce as a, racial capital. We've already impacted on that, or actually just capital. The Gordon evidence is not responsive. They can't continue extending a card without responding to the words of the second card, which is that anti-black social life is the condition of social death, which is our argument about why a politics of disorientation is necessary to understand the political terrain and to not ratchet down the level in which we understand violence. The ruin evidence will be in the 1NR, but it assumes that it doesn't really matter. The Marriott, Will's taking it, but the Marriott card talks about something escaping. We're saying that the something escaping is the philiophobia distinction, that something escapes in order to be reincorporated back into white civil society. Though the form may change, the content doesn't. They can explain to you how material changes have happened. That's our argument about sort of the nature of shifting economies, which is why focusing on those things is bad. The black-white binary argument, the Arante card is definitively a negative card that will structure a lot of the rest of the debate in the 2NR because it means that, which we'll say in the 1NR, but it means that the affect of the affirmative is bad. They say that affect is bad, that engaging in hegemonic institutions is bad. We want this adds to Gramscianism and the abolition movement of the affirmative, which makes this pretty much a non-starter because it means that the framework arguments of the affirmative, all of their argument about the research that they attune themselves to, are one that do not align to the sort of absolute moment of captivity that their evidence is talking about. The last piece of evidence the last argument that it's too much abstraction, that the alternative is too much abstraction. Our argument is that the only way that we can understand the situation that we're in is to refuse to reproduce blackness to a new future, but to understand the conditions of where we're at. There's no grammar.
Okay, so how can we know that anti-blackness operates ontologically?
How can we know?
Yeah.
Well, I think that there's very clear tenets. So there's tenets of social death. Do you mean in a more broad sense, or I don't know?
What is it that allows us to identify this as predetermined?
Well, what's predetermined? Our argument is that we can understand anti-black, because there's not a grammar to explain black suffering. So the whole argument about how Africans went into the same period as Africans and came out as black, and since then, blackness has been reduced to sort of fungible criminal, and every gain that black people have made has been reincorporated into the structure writ large, and that sort of blackness has continued to be defined as bestial, criminal, thug, nigger, etc. throughout different modes of politics. That the content of that changes, but the form of negrophilia and negrophobia doesn't.
So you've made arguments about how that implicates the ability for institutional engagement to be ever effective because those things are predetermined. My question is how we can know that there aren't differences in, say, a world with and without something like universal health insurance or with and without prisons.
Sure,
Why is
I
that
think
not different?
evidence is pretty good about this because he talks about sort of the relationships between civil society and sort of what the production of a counter-hegemonic thing has produced for black people. So I understand what you're asking, I guess now, because the whole point is just that the inability to explain, like, I guess I don't mean to repeat myself, but the inability to explain the lack of agreement to explain black suffering extends not only to black people but to white people. So his argument is that the world itself is structured upon something that white people do not have that they attempt to fill. And I think your Aronke evidence is quite indicative of this as well, but that basically the way that affect and performance work is to sort of fill the relationship that white people don't have to themselves, so they end up like not understanding, not being able to define it except for in contrast to what black people are. So criminality, prison industrial complex.
Yeah, based on that system of power, is there a way for white people who say like control a prison or control a pharma company to make meaningful differences in their behavior? Like, does it matter whether or not prison system operates in a community and, you know, continuously reincarcerates people? Is that something that is valuable to consider whatsoever under your theory of power?
I mean, I think that the refusal of movements such as the Chartist movement are kind of what Willerson is talking about. So I guess they have significance in relationship to the refusal of those things because it ultimately allows us to understand the ways in which white civil society re-encapsulates sort of the large modality of captivity. So like the previous abolition movement would be a pretty good example of this, about just like sort of who is valorized, what white abolitionists are valorized, and what that means for an abolitionist to be in the direction of like, I don't know, anti-slavery.
Can that abolition be beneficial?
Can that it depends on what standard you're evaluating it for. Do we think that it's beneficial to produce black lives? No.
Okay, it'll be the K. I'm going to start on the perm, and then jump around a lot from there. I'll be sure to signpost. And then it'll be the case. We're good? Permutation, if we want a framework argument, the perm doesn't make any sense because the app is beholden to all their representations. If they win framework, the alt is still mutually exclusive with the app. The alt is unflinching and links proof that they are flinch combining the app, and the alt doesn't move to weight in a sense that our revolution never is criticized and says compromise as with the radical elements of the Chartist movements. The perm fails because any link proves the perm is just caving in, which is the argument I made above. The burger card that they read, non-performance reforms won't get the job done in finals of the NDT. The app is a big change of the status quo within the status quo, which is moderate. The whole K is an impact turned to this frame. We have several DAs. One is interest compromise. The app forces compromise on what is in the interest of black people, i.e. white people will demand X, so we have to settle for Y. Second is black phobia. It makes the permutation makes black feminist scholarship fungible. Douglas 16 established brings to the forefront an assistant framework that is about black articulation and suffering at the same time as it pauses for any revolutionary subject to this in theory. More dynamic than blackness. Black phobia is like the conceptual maneuver and arguing black feminists as well. Usurity through supposed to relies on identity, crowding out being and becoming the push to rethink intersectionality demonstrates there is the problem with his black subject theories is unwilling to focus on objective power use black bodies as objective proof and thus verify that there is objectification in black. Then in black theory throw the coalition away and link the not for evidence as that coalitional purchaser of the upper bed. They rely on false relationality between black and non-black people. Their Ronke evidence is a neg card. It can
concludes anti-blackness is ontological and it's a data performance. That's not the all. It's affective pessimism, which Q explained to Rocky 13. Blackness is structural positionality is a way of thinking about the implication of racist paradigmatic blackness, clarifies how structural variable ontological sufferings and antagonistic relation to one another, which will insert back into highlighting humanism could not have produced itself without the simultaneous production of the blocking destruction that became known as the black. The Gruen evidence, empathy is bad. The Hartman evidence says that it relies on kind of a false universality that causes white people to bring that which is unknowable, i.e. the black near by way of proxy in order to better understand it, which is bad. The Gruen evidence links to the Leon porno-troping evidence that they read about new materialism. Gruen 17 entangled empathy is relational ontology. I'm also invoking the new sense of materialism in multiple relations across space, species, and substance, which is their evidence. Q told me to read this random with this Wilderson card. I think it's about the abolition stuff, but thereafter can elaborate contingent violations of the police rather than gratuitous violence, which is bad. Wilderson 3 blackness is a positionality and absolute dereliction of civil society and cannot be established in the hegemonic intervention movement there. Rhetorical structure of political desire underwritten by anti-blackness is such a curse. Here's the moment where she finds herself among abolition and she feels necessary to adopt the same anticipation that verisimilitude of Asada's.
Yeah, just mark it at Asada's.
Mark it at Asada's. Case. The biological life focus argument from the overview is bad. The William evidence says it uses contingency and creativity in order to credit structural position of black life social death outweighs black people are dead now allowing black death to occur to promote life is bad and ultimately unethical, which is their next framing argument demands on institution about which is the whole do and see there. Neoliberalism for mechanics when anti-black racism Nelson 18 a new study by economists is affirming the census review that in the paper assess the data on mobility for 20 million children shows class can't explain the gap. Black American many even wealthy families are much more likely to end up in lower income brackets than white men who grew up poor. Pulls apart the hypothesis about inequality was recorded. Inequality is a question of seeking. I read that in the 1 and C, the sequencing argument, the Wilderson evidence based on abolition is an answer to their argument, and also proves the 1 and C argument I made about how private justice will fill in if we get rid of the structure of prisons. That doesn't stop policing because private justice, vigilante white people will still do it. Natalie did not answer this argument in the 2AC and just said that they reverse calculus solve abolition, but did not impact turn to abolition. So I don't know what they think they're going to do in the 1A. The alt-right arguments are definitively negative. Matthew's evidence is we don't need to create a new version of the party because if we give people single payer, they're not afraid of losing their jobs, which we say will actively just act out within the existing structure of the party. So none of their evidence matters. The 2 pieces of evidence about refusing Trump through institutions doesn't assume the kind of ontological nature of blackness that our critique obviously problematizes and answers their argument. Single payer then makes Trump popular and election for 2020. Harris 17 of Trump. We're to research the research that discovered single payer is popular on whose side of Trump voters have of the participants for single payer in the value areas. Members of the alt-right call for single payer would maybe a huge benefit to have what are the Trump claims to love white working class citizens. They don't get their deep via the Matthews evidence because they fiat that the Republicans get on board with it, which overcomes a lot of the kind of structural barriers. But the fact that that happens proves our watered down argument that is made in the Coons evidence that they say it's just aspirational. That's wrong. It says that cronyism in the United States Congress, especially with Trump, means that the worst form of single payer ICI UCC happens. They have not defined the term in the plan. QAC cross-X is way too late, and the 1AR is even later. The plan assumes the best version, but that's naive, you fools. Klein 14. The reason the U.S. doesn't have single payer is the special interests have a hammerlock on Congress. The reason the U.S. shouldn't have single payer is that it's too captured by special interest government is too corrupt Medicare, except payments from vendors, health industry. Interests have so much sway. The prices would end up being set by healthcare interests. When you go to Canada, the lobbying that we have here is illegal. The House Ways and Means Committee gets money from lobbyists. The simple fact would the fact that a policy worked in another country does not mean that it will work in this country. The research arguments, I don't think they have a good answer. But even though I kind of boned it with the Shelton one because I didn't flow the one I see, and Bernstein is slower than I thought he was. But the second argument was totally mishandled. It says that their use of the term health disparities kind of totally eradicates their research method and makes it 100% useless, especially in solving things like the disparate research thing. I didn't actually bone it with the Shelton evidence. Our reading says that the way in which the death gaps are experienced differentially with other people, even if they didn't read the evidence, it's pretty good evidence for us, and it's an impact to this argument from their bow leg evidence that says that use of the term health disparities is a bad research practice. It's impacted by the wise evidence that says they're kind of universality, which is what you should assume of the plan given the fiat arguments and the research arguments that I've made above. And they can't solve because it doesn't address things like the social determinants of health, and it allows white people to cover to negotiate what gets covered, which is bad.
It'll be case, the K overview, and then the K. Is everyone good to go? Let me know when you're ready. Okay.
Yeah, here it is. Yes. Now we're good.
Okay. Vote ad for universal single-payer health insurance that confronts the watermark of anti-black neoliberal corporate influence institutions that leave incarcerated folks with no basic services, preventative care, increased prison mortality, and reincarceration. It literally contributes to the loop that is the prison industrial complex, wrongly incarcerating folks, denying basic services, and ensuring they are sent back to prison. Single-payer guarantees basic treatment, life-saving preventative services, financial access, improved doctor-patient relationships, and community autonomy in medicine. Biological death matters. It causes interim suffering, is unethical in its disparate distribution, and forecloses future value, which means that it turns the old into more as an attempt to create some future ethics, which is intrinsic to the idea that you should vote negative to begin with. Encounters with the medical complex are inevitable. That exposes the tension in their worldview between theory and the material world, in which they are 10 out of 10 forced to abandon their abstract theory for a spur-of-the-moment decision that you would not be prepared to make without understanding the medical complex. For example, do you support local legislation that grants city jails from terminating Medicaid, or refuse to cast a vote? Do you allow pharma ads in your community, or say everything is fucked no matter what? Winning the efficacy of our mechanism disproves the thesis they are critiquing, as we have proven that it is possible to confront the worst instances of anti-black violence. The act talks about biological life and predetermined health, which proves the permutation is able to solve. Refusing biological life is more coercive because it predetermines the individual value to life. We agree that inequality can't explain anti-black racism. It's multifaceted. The act has one strategy to attempt to solve it. The circumvention arguments. We read a card that we are consistent with abolition. That's our Davis evidence. They don't have evidence that we recreate incarceration. It's just a bunch of assertions in the one and R. The alt-right arguments. One, our interpretation is fiat, is that it gets to be durable. It implements the best version of single payer, which is what our evidence talks about. Two, our evidence says Trump can never get people on board with healthcare. Three, our model framework means that we never talk about things. Their model framework means we never talk about things that are happening. That's an inherency. Four, our scholarship still matters. Discussion radical changes is an important academic tool. That's framework. Dems are winning the election. Every poll says it. They don't have uniqueness evidence. Single payer destroys the GOP. Answer their Matthews evidence. Like in 17, single payer would bring the Republican Party half terms. Pro-government message with influence. Healthier moves guarantee election loss. Burn in 17. Stay away from healthier and then move on. Healthier loses. Dems lost the majority after pursuing a major overhaul. Republicans to be the same as healthier. It's against the personal choice and policy always mean some will pay more, so others will pay less. The health disparities argument. Their evidence says health disparities is bad. If that's the only way that we talk about health insurance, not that the phrase is something, not that the phrase existing as something is bad. The alternative is saying health is all equal, which links to their circumvention. Offense to K. Their theory is the logic of mass incarceration because they leave prisoners for the sake of abstraction. While theoretically this makes sense, it makes no sense at the material level when individuals need access to care and are forcibly denied. If the ballot is about resolving black death and violence, the only ballot is for the affirmative. A neg ballot is one for the status quo, which is unethical and should be rejected. If we win and risk that institutions and social interactions are contingent, you cannot vote negative because it means they actively deny value for those who disagree with their understanding of institutions. There are thousands of years of human history, and their theory takes a small piece and misapplies it. That's the Gordon evidence. Blackness is not absolute because social systems are not closed. A priori assertions ignore the fact that contingent interactions, individual social circumstances, personal differences all determine human beings. Blackness was constructed, which means that it can also be deconstructed. Their predictions are unfalsifiable because they're built on foregone conclusions about how people operate, which is a bad way to predict behavior because it uses theory to overdetermine practice. Sexton does not contradict with this argument that Gordon is making, and it's also way under highlighted. There's an affective pessimism DA. Their ontological inquiry only operates at the level of theory and can't respond in the face of violence. The move to ontology and affect at the expense of praxis is parasitic on the grammar of suffering because it is one-dimensional, over-theorizes power at the expense of responding to violence. Or healthcare good offense proves this argument. They can explain certain historical systems, but do not account for a vast group of black people who do want healthcare. Ranking is not a negative card. Affective change alone is inadequate. The whole point of the app is merging theory, language, and praxis. This is a great firm argument because it proves the value of considering praxis despite racialization. The reduction of thinking blackness as maximum captivity locks not just blackness, but black people into a grid of violence and racial metaphysics that contain no outside. This understanding of pathology is wielded to reducing black people to flesh, which creates a sentimental affective economy around blackness as dereliction, in which structural racism becomes the basis of how we think through the total sum of black life history and becoming, which is not only violently reductionist, but requires suffering and constant injury to maintain its theoretical position of injury, suffering, pathology as the axiom of black activity that is unethical and should be rejected as abstraction, devoid of any real account of black resistance or history beyond captivity. That's the Marriott evidence. Permutation, do both. Incremental steps toward tearing down the state are not incompatible with the one ACO. Reform is non-reformist because it does not seek to make the state coherent. It seeks to point out the state's incoherence. This is contrary to economic logic, is it refuses productivity in favor of absolute care. Our truancy evidence says that health is a central component of abolitionism. That's the Davis evidence. Winning framework doesn't make the firm go away. Wake links versus the 1AC. We've impact turned interest compromise. The alternative is prison industrial control. No link to black femphobia. The app is entirely compatible with such laws, and using that to justify the 1AC framework debate. Permutation. Both frameworks solve their education and advocacy arguments. Our interpretation is you should evaluate whether the app is a good or a bad idea, and we get the op because that's the only way to talk about implementation. First is healthcare research. Uniqueness goes affirmative because healthcare research is over-focused on theory, ignores the quantitative measures necessary and able to improve care. Melding theory and practice is the best way to confront hegemonic institutions because it gives us the tool to recognize the best institutional change, refine our arguments, and see weaknesses in the current model. Public health education can target intervention toward practices like community care after prisoners are released have been terminated for Medicaid or curriculum. We also get to weigh the app of the West. It makes it impossible to be affirmative, which is a terrible model of debate. The pornotroping arguments, contingent empathy is good, bonds of solidarity, both relation to challenge oppression. The alternative is white people refusing to discuss oppression, which makes it impossible to challenge it, and also is a strategy commodified by the alt-right as an excuse to disengage from issues like the pharmaceutical industry while they receive millions in kickbacks from cheap racialized drugs. The James arguments, the black matrix is not incompatible with the app because it doesn't force black women into the state. James is inconsistent with our prison's bad offense because the reason politicking exists is because the state is so powerful reforms are overly incremental. The black family argument is a description of how the language operates, but that doesn't reproduce language as racial capital to facilitate the system that's necessary to engage to create change. Our Berlin evidence says that the old affective economies already function with a public-private demand. This old its fungibility. The alternative embraces that divide more than the app by placing individual over the public, which I don't think was answered in the block.
is the alt-right said the election stuff was cute, but they dropped the argument that whether or not Trump gets the rest of the alt-right on board, white nationalists are more likely to do extremely heinous shit when they have health insurance that should control the direction the midterms have, are evidences that triangulates Trump's popularity and gets used. Yeah, and gets the basic side to hold. The line from the 1 AR to the 2 AR should be especially strict and scratch any new 2 AR extrapolations of arguments because it's used to in our strategy. Biological death is the answer by Leon. He uses creativity, contingency, creates moments of crisis in order to force black people back into the fold. All answer the permutation first. Their framework answers the permutation proves that they only have to defend the whole one proves that they have to defend the whole one in the representation video if they win the framework or alternative mutually exclusive with the affirmative and because the alternative is unflinching. Any link to the dissent is a link to the permutation because it makes the alternative moderate compromise, which will defend evidence. Impact turns out their burger card isn't a good argument, especially given the sequencing stuff we want about abolition. Non-reforms reforms are still a change within the status quo, which is moderate. The permutation causes interest compromise. It's bad. Forces black people back into the political first. It's simply about Hartman says that it can only exist if white people know their relationship, know they're unknowable, aka blackness, and bring it closer, which is our argument about how they move themselves closer to create criminality in order to reestablish a form of subjectivity for themselves. They've conceded that was a problem with the old abolition movement because it forced black people into the terms of civil society. They conceded an impact turn to the terms of citizenry, liberalism, and citizenry, and citizenry and emancipation would force black people to use counter-hegemonic strategies when those strategies and those terms are themselves featured in contrast to anti-black violence. You can't concede the critique of grammar and then go for your research practices are good. Interest compromise, the affirmative versus a compromise on what interests is black people, i.e. white people will demand X, so they have to settle for Y. That demand is bad. It makes the alternative fail because it means that we never understand blackness because it's always circulated qua something else or for white people's subjectivity in order to justify a larger political movement. Next to the black xenophobia just had completely conceded in the 1 AR argument is that understanding race, you have to understand blackness as a foundation for class, race, and gender. You can't understand those things through that you can't understand blackness through class, race, and gender. This becomes particularly important when they don't answer the particularities of the James evidence, which says that racial capital overshadows that a focus on racial capital overshadows a focus on racial rape. The card quite literally says that we focus on movements in the public like the prison-industrial complex. It trades off with the quotidian forms of violence. Not quotidian in terms of affect. That's a laughable argument. It's quotidian because there isn't a grammar to explain it. It's continuous, and focusing on quotidian violence traits. It's in direct contrast with focusing on images of suffering, like public sphere violence, which is the reason why the alternative should become before the affirmative. Okay, cool. Go to the critique proper. Neoliberalism can explain the specific positionality of blackness within civil society. Blackness is specifically articulated through a history, shadow slavery, one, Trump doctrine, share, propping, redlining, mass incarceration, each of which trend line, racial difference, schema, targeted, black clashes, pathology. The grammar of neoliberalism distracts away from accumulated history of trauma, criminalization, pathology by focusing on political analysis, welfare state rollback, and regulation of industry, financialization of the economy. This renders black flesh invisible in political access, ignoring the way that black flesh has been given specific meaning within America. Their grammar inevitably misses uniqueness of blackness as a positionality with civil society regulating black people to the sideline of social movements. Their concerns are secondary and pathologizing them for the failure of political transformation. Instead, you should prioritize the grammar of accumulation, fungibility of description for specific political concerns and positionality of blackness. Only this grammar can account for American civil society's investment in making black flesh visible and pathologizing blackness. You should be suspicious of your own interpretive framework for understanding the debate of white people and suspicious of profit motivation as an organizing vocabulary for radical politics because it produces precisely the situation in which black debaters and activists are forced to characterize themselves to white audiences using white evaluative standards is a proof that displacing the hegemony of white audiences of prior question to fight profit motivation is the only means of addressing concerns of black people, and it demonstrates the after permutation arguments fail in bad faith attempts to build coalitional branches between black and white activists. Trust between white and black political movements is impossible without prior displacement of hegemony of whiteness. You can vote negative to force self-reflexivity on both white members of the debate community and white political activists and writ large, and force a confrontation with whiteness and force a confrontation with the role whiteness plays in the role of future distress. You should treat the alternative as a question of methodology. They conceded an argument that debate is a question of social movement practice, and that if they're right that debate is a question of movement practice and subjectivity formation, if we win that the alt understands blackness, that means that their movements reproduce racial rape, and henceforth the products or the things that are material ignore the gratuitous forms of literal violence like rape by police officers, etc., etc., etc. They're like, we end prisons. They've conceded that the world is fucking captivity. You don't get to concede major structural claims and then try and go for a permutation as like the only means of rectifying it, or that black people are in prison. Yeah, they're in prison because their skin is marked as criminal. You haven't won that those things change over time. You've said that the the burden is on us to prove why it's non-falsifiable. I want to make something very fucking clear. This Harambe card says that the affect of the affirmative is bad, that it gets trapped within civil society, that hegemonic politics are bad, and that we should not engage, that black people are in a position of absolute captivity. If that's true, then only beginning at the conditions of non-consent would produce any productive quote-unquote movement, because it would be one of complete disorder, one in which we absolutely embrace blackness as incoherent and stop trying to restrict the terms of freedom and the chartist movement upon them, because the tools within counter-hegemonic politics cannot articulate the specific demands of accumulation and fungibility, which is all the explanation I did above about like Gramscianism and that.
kind of talk about what I thought was at the end of the 2NR, which is like a ranking and such, and then I'm gonna go back.
We're gonna talk about writing down.
Yeah, I guess so. Sorry. I hope to tell you an interesting story. This is what I'm going for. I'm trying to do a better job than Ezra. That's my goal right now. Love you, buddy. All right.
Vote F for a drastic intervention in the most significant moment after people who shouldn't have been in prison get released. The government locks folks into a cycle of incarceration and control, Medicaid determination, reincarceration, repeat, often including death. Her argument takes the problem at the intersection of public health to break this cycle with guaranteed care, preventative medicine, basic services, and financial coverage saves millions of lives, close racialized health gaps, and decrease the power of the carceral state. Their abstraction for the sake of abstraction does not answer the question of how we respond to this intimate material moment in which their high level of theory cannot conceive of properly. Even if they win a lot of their theoretical arguments, you have to be able to answer their question of how their ethics allows you to confront a situation in which you are given the choice for whether or not a city should keep someone on Medicaid when they go to prison or refuse some sort of state-type engagement. You have to be able to respond to those specific contingencies of violence. Otherwise, it can't actually translate into any material improvement. Biological death does matter, but it doesn't necessarily push anyone into the fold. It's not a single definition of value or how people should operate within society, but rather the recognition that to create value, to win a ballot, to exist, to improve theory, there has to be some foundation of life. It's also not simply about the idea that we don't exist, but the material manifestation of racialized violence that causes biological life to begin with. Police brutality and racialized violence and incarceration are all things we can agree are bad, but only the act provides a strategy for confronting it at the locus of its material consequences. They do not have a card that abolition leads to bad policing. We have read evidence that says that the AFT's process is an effective way to reduce reincarceration rates, which is a material consequence of the AFT. The fact that they have pointed out that leading to bad policing is problematic demonstrates that they believe there is some contingency for future improvement that operates within our value system. It doesn't get watered down. One is we get durable fiat. We've read evidence that says that we can use public health policy research to combat the best strategy for incremental reform. Two is that obviously no AF is ever something Trump would do. Otherwise, nothing would be inherent or everything would be inherent or debate just wouldn't work because we'd be talking about things that were already happening. We get to define the scope and the mandate of the plan throughout the debate. Otherwise, it's always just about the plan text and the AF never does anything. This applies just as much to the alternative because it just gets circumvented by the alt right, which was our empathy argument about how if we do not have the capacity to talk about issues that happen and simply refuse because material improvements are impossible, that's used as a justification for ignorance in the face of violence because we say healthcare doesn't matter because black life can never matter. Who do you think circumvents that? I'll tell you, it's Mr. Donald J. Trump. The way that white nationalists do bad stuff is not implicated by the AF. We've read evidence that says that they wouldn't take credit for single-payer policy and link terms, whatever their politics argument was, because it says that it wouldn't cause them to win 2020. Now, if we win any hole in their theory, it implicates every link in this debate because it proves that their foundational assumptions about how the plan is consumed, how grammar operates, are inaccurate and dangerous for those who see black life differently. There are certainly folks who have been wrongfully incarcerated that would appreciate access to health care, but the NEG says no, they have to go no basic medication or access life-saving treatment or health services that prevent reincarceration. Voting NEG is voting for the status quo, an ethic with which you exit this space and say black people ought not to be able to choose whether they access health care. We have a few pieces of evidence. First is our Gordon evidence. If we were to risk that institutions are contingent, it's impossible to vote NEG because it means that certain interactions can't be defined by one absolute system of grammar or explanation of how language operates. And the fact that blackness was created means it can't change. Anti-blackness is not an absolute construct that exists as an a priori assertion, but rather something that is contingent and changes throughout history. This is the affective pessimism DA. Their Ranky card is a summary of Wilderson, and they haven't read an argument besides that. Ranky says that our ontological inquiry only operates at the level of theory, which is kind of connection to the argument that I was going for at the beginning of the 2ER about how they can't respond to particular instances of violence, which means they can't account for a vast group of people who do want health care, and they theorize power at the expense of that response. Third is our grid ability, just that they conceded. The Marriott evidence says that their understanding of pathology is reducing black people to flesh in every instance, which becomes the basis and the grid by which we think about black life. That is bad. bad because it relies on suffering to confront suffering, which is circular, and means that we can never confront the foundation of anti-black violence as it exists in the first place, which creates a massive uniqueness problem for all of their links about how we push black people into some sort of fold. That's something that the alternative is much more susceptible to. Lastly, is if we win any possibility that the AF can change the way that the carceral state operates, be beneficial from someone who's exiting from prison as a result of mass incarceration, it demonstrates that contingent improvement is just a thing that's fucking true. The Vermont evidence impact turns their James argument. He says that rejecting the private-public capital distinction is dangerous and it supercharges the mode of prediction, which is something that they link to by putting individual commodity into a debate space to ask for a ballot, which proves that their arguments about how commodification operates, especially at the level of the individual, are inherently arbitrary and really not tied to anything white people or David and I have done in this debate, which ultimately proves the permutation, because if the value of creating meaning is some sort of individual ethical orientation, that's not something that's required to be tied to victory. Any link is compromise argument is answered by our Davis evidence, which says that the AF can lead to absolute absolution and it can be non-reformist reform. I answered the link about pulling black people into the fold and about reestablishing white subjectivity. There's no link between their neoliberalism offense and the AF. We don't think that there is a one specific way that you can explain why violence operates, but that it's contingent and we can use neoliberal systems to confront it. Berlant's impact turns their rejection of neoliberalism because he says that rejecting the public-private sphere only creates more violence because it makes it impossible for us to think what happens outside of debate. What happens when we leave abstraction and are actually forced to confront a situation in which someone is infected by incarceration? It's just much more complicated than saying everyone is already socially dead. That is bad because it actively denies agency in life.